Storytelling is the most powerful method of persuasion, especially and oftentimes, unfortunately, when coupled with purposeful, emotional elements meant to spark reactions. We've become way too prisoner of the moment when following sports. We tend to allow ourselves to be swept up in the emotional storylines that drive conversations, oftentimes from sources with agendas. The storylines driving most of the conversations leading to this past Sunday's Super Bowl incessantly pushed storylines that wanted us to believe that the Chiefs were too powerful for any and all comers. We too often forget to remind ourselves, in particular when discussing professional sports, that all of the players on the teams that are considered underdogs are also peak performance elite athletes, and that on any given day, if momentum, belief, and whatever's driving the underdog team as a unit come together, then there shouldn't be too much of a surprise as to the underdog team dominating on any given day. So today on The Bunker, we decided to have a great conversation with one of my favorite sports journalists, Jorge Martín. Jorge is the founder of an incredibly entertaining and informative sports podcast, Famila FFB, which recently published its 123rd episode. Jorge is one of my few go-to sources for in-depth knowledge and breakdowns of all things football, baseball, or basketball, past or present. So in today's episode, we cover some of the key takeaway storylines that were created during Super Bowl 55. Storylines such as, should Tom Brady be now be considered the greatest athlete in team sports history? Tampa Bay's underrated defense and non-traditional universities more and more producing elite level players in pro sports, and what to look for in the approaching NFL free agency and draft craziness. I hope you'll enjoy. The game yesterday brought up a lot of different storylines that I think most people didn't expect up front. One being, Tom Brady and his legacy as being the greatest team athlete of all time. A lot of guys are running with that. He's one of my favorites to watch because of the excellence quotient. But I am definitely not putting him as the greatest team sport athlete in history, which a lot of people are doing. I think his accomplishments will probably never be. I don't even see with Mahomes as great as he is. It's too early to say. But even if he plays another 17 years or so to catch up to where Brady is now, I don't know that anyone's going to be able to do what Brady has done with the Patriots and the Bucs. What do you think about all that?
It's hard to imagine. I mean, think about it. I mean, one of the things that really struck me about the game yesterday is, is that Brady passed Jordan on total number of championships. Mm-hmm. So, and you and I both believe that Jordan probably would have won 8 in a row if he wouldn't have retired for those 2 years. Mm-hmm. But he didn't do it. So that's the thing. He passed Jordan, but he also tied a legend, Babe Ruth. Mm-hmm. Babe Ruth won 7 championships in 7 World Series. Is the epitome of excellence. And you look at players. I mean, somebody pointed out Peyton Manning, who was his rival, equal. I mean, some people say I would say from a pure talent standpoint, Peyton Manning was better, right. But Brady had the better teams and usually beat Manning in the playoffs. Peyton Manning got inducted into the Hall of Fame yesterday. That means he's been retired for 5 years, and Brady's still doing it. Brady
at a high level.
At a high level, had his second best season of all time of his 20-year career this season at age 43. So I don't know if it's the avocado ice cream. I mean, it's definitely right. It's definitely the mapped out training regimen that works so well for him. He is, for me, he is. If he's not the all-time greatest, most successful athlete in team sports, and I think you still got to put Bill Russell there too. I think he's got 9 or 10 championships. You look at that. I mean, it's a short list. It's a short list before you get to him.
It's interesting. You brought up Babe Ruth. You brought up Bill Russell, and that's the argument or part of the discussions I've seen recently regarding Brady, especially since last night, in the last 15 hours or so. And that is, when you pull up people from other eras, it's hard to compete. You can't put them in the same conversation with Jordan, with Brady. They're both part of the modern era, which, the athletes are bigger, better, faster, stronger. I do think Russell and Ruth in today's world with the training and what we know would succeed. But I always stop short, as much as I just absolutely tip my hat to give the tip of the cap to Brady as far as excellence is concerned. I do stop short from calling him the greatest athlete. I think football is, each sport is so unique. Basketball, there's so much more opportunity to showcase your abilities. Football, you only play one side of the ball. And it's through no fault of the players that it's going to be much more difficult for them to be chosen as the best. But what happens in basketball, and even somewhat in baseball, but more so basketball than any sport, because you do have to play both sides, it's so much easier. And honestly, athletes in the skilled positions in football, they're just as good athletes as any other sport. But these big humans in basketball are kind of freakish in a good way. I mean, you take somebody like LeBron, you take somebody like Michael Jordan is what, 6'6", 6'7" when he played? Mm-hmm. He's a big guy. If you think about it, still in the real world, he's a big man. To be able to do what he did for all those years is incredible. Brady's incredible. He's disciplined. What Brady shows to me is discipline, determination with discipline. This is what it can get you in your chosen profession, in particular, in arguably the most difficult position in all of sports, which is the quarterback, with all the things that you have to be aware of and take care of. More so than pitchers, probably in baseball. You and I got to have a conversation about that dynamic versus one day pitchers versus, we will definitely have that conversation. But as far as when you're talking just pure athlete, the greatest team sports athlete or greatest team sports player, there's so much more that goes into a football team winning a Super Bowl. And I know out of those 7, at least 3 or 4 of those 7, some of the defensive players on New England would say, wait, hold on a minute. Wait a minute, man. Wait a minute. Whereas in Jordan's championships, it was primarily Jordan. Yes, he had to have Pippen and help and this and that. But those defensive players, like Jordan, could not have a subpar Jordan-esque type game. And I know for a fact some of the Patriots' wins, there were a couple of defensive teams that were just unstoppable for the Patriots, on the Patriots' behalf, that helped push them over. But that's where I come from. It's a great debate. We can go on and on with that specific debate forever. It's natural. It's the human tendency to be prisoner of the moment. And if you're prisoner of the moment, what happened yesterday is brilliant. It's incredible. But I'd like to think of that Tampa defense also. Let's give them some props. For instance, Tony Romo. Yeah, I'm going to let you go on this in one sec. Tony Romo continued to call the KC defense sticky coverage. And basically, they were playing too high safeties. So it would, in essence, negate that speed element that KC has over everybody. Makes you wonder why most people didn't do it. What are your thoughts on all that?
Well, I mean, I think it's it totally is. To me, I think the MVP should have been the defense. It's just you have to pick one. If you have to pick one or two, it's hard to do that because, I mean, there were probably it really was kind of like, a concerted effort. It was like a ballet back there because, I was kind of having the debate, the internal debate. Is it the pass rush was fantastic. And that was the thing. They needed to actually be able to rush Patrick Mahomes with their front 4 defensive linemen so that they could drop 7 into coverage and have 2 guys on Kelsey and have 2 guys on Hill. And that's how you – and to me, that's how you do it. Not everybody could do that. The only reason they were able to do that, they were able to do that so successfully. And I was actually kind of shocked because – I felt coming into that game, and I rewatched the film of the first time that they played in Week 12 when Tyreek Hill just went nuclear, 203 yards in the first quarter
with the piece
and 2 touchdowns. He was nothing short of spectacular. But what happened was it was quick throws. it was quick throws, but he never. Yesterday they weren't able to even do those yesterday. And because there were several times that Mahomes just was running for his life right off the bat, and so there was those. So it was the defensive line that did that, but also the DBs who were absolutely torched last time. They came to play yesterday. They did not give the receivers any room, and I mean, you looked at it, and I was kind of shocked because this whole hit, even maybe taking it to the house. Oh, the DB came in and hit them out, knocked them out. So, I mean, that's why it was just, I mean, that defensive effort was just, I mean, it was balletic. It was just incredible. And really that was the only way to beat Mahomes. Why don't other teams do it? They probably don't have the pass rush to do it, or they don't have the DBs to do it. And you really need 11 defenders who could do that. Because you also had, Devin White and Levante David right there in the middle, who Devin White had the game of his life. And one of the incredible things, I heard this little anecdote. It was about sometime in December, they announced the Pro Bowl, announced the Pro Bowl rosters, and Devin White was not on the Pro Bowl roster. And this year they did not have a Pro Bowl, but he wanted that recognition. And
sure,
Tom Brady could see that Devin White, and he went up to him and he said, "Hey, I know you're bummed about the Pro Bowl, but remember, there's a bigger bowl that we're trying to win." And I'm telling you, who wouldn't give up something like that? Who wouldn't give up a Pro Bowl to get a Super Bowl game? And actually, Devin White is a guy who is going to be invited back for championship celebrations for many, many years to come after this, because he balled out. All of those guys balled out. It was really impressive the way that defense played yesterday.
Shaq Barrett.
Yeah, love that guy.
He killed it yesterday. It's interesting. You said something to the effect of how they would put, you needed the four guys up front to handle business. So basically it was the schemes. And that's what I was saying about why. So back to the earlier portion of conversation, and I'll wrap it back to this, in that football, there are so many different variables, so much more than any other sport, in particular basketball, to where one player like a Jordan can have that type of an effect on a game to where he can make it one way or another. Whereas if you look at the defensive schemes from Coach Todd Bowles for Tampa, and what Leftwich and Brady were able to pull together specifically at Brady's position. You mentioned the game with KC and Tampa earlier. Dime drops the whole time, right? And let those speed demons do what they do. That's basically what Brady and his guys on the offensive side did. On the defensive side of the ball, the scheme that they came up with to prevent that speed this time, that's why it's so difficult. And the thing we forget when you say, oh, those guys came to play, the thing we forget, I think most people as fans, and we get caught up in the emotion of things, Brady's the greatest. That's why I'm like, let's hold back a little bit, because the guys on the other side of the football, you remember every guy on both sides of the ball, offense and defense, were all the big fish wherever they originated. Every single guy was the top dog from Pop Warner till that moment yesterday. Their team may not have put things together throughout the regular season as well as the other team, but on any given Sunday, any one of those guys, for whatever reason or a compilation of reasons that gets them all on the same page, they can all push enough pressure on whoever the top seed is and make it happen. And that's exactly what happened yesterday. So I'm never really surprised. I'm never really surprised when someone who has dominated all season becomes the dominated in the big game, because something happened during the playoffs. Someone said something. Some coach said something. It might have been college. It was college. And it became poster board material, locker room material for the other team to leverage in amping themselves up. And that happened just in this bowl season with the college teams. So I think a lot of these guys on the other side of the ball for Tampa were like, I was All-American, I was all this, I was all that. These are just dudes I've played with for the last 20 years. We're going to show you what's what. and they went out there and they made it happen. So I'm never really surprised when it comes to the big games, and we tend to uplift certain players. I think Mahomes is one of the best quarterbacks I've seen in my life. But let's pump the brakes. 10 other guys on the field, right? Anything can happen. So that's the difference I was saying when people are trying to throw Tom Brady up there. His accomplishments are incredible. But so many extra layers in football. If you have a Michael Jordan, literally a lot of the games you can just roll the ball out there. Not that there aren't schemes and everything in basketball. There are, definitely. And there are things you have to do. But if you have a talent like a Michael Jordan, a Magic Johnson, a Shaq, it could just throw the ball into the big guy. Just throw the ball into the big guy. Give Jordan the ball. You know, you can win games that way. You know, it's very difficult to do that in football. Anyway, that's just my 3 minutes on that. I just get a little hyped about that stuff for some reason.
I want to add something to kind of agree with you.
Please.
Microcosm of what you're saying. Game 6 of the 1998 finals. Mm-hmm. Jazz against the Bulls. Michael is having a rough game. But then all of a sudden, about 90 seconds are left in the game, and it's a nip and tuck game. Mm-hmm. Mike hits a shot on the other side, makes a steal, and then he hits the shot against Brian Russell. And that one, I mean, that you don't get that in football. You don't get that in football. You don't get that in baseball. I mean, that's why it's, when you get these singular two-way players, you mentioned those guys. There's LeBron is in there. Kobe is in there.
Kobe's definitely in there.
Who did it on both sides of the ball. LeBron. I mean, LeBron. What's his most famous play? It's that block against the Warriors.
Down,
and just being able
chasing Curry down.
Yeah, exactly. This guy's what, third all time in points scored. And his most famous play is a block. I mean,
yeah, exactly. And think about it. Last night alone, LeBron scored 2 3-pointers in the last few seconds of the game, and the Lakers won in overtime. You can give the ball to one player in basketball that can make all the difference in the world. And so that's how these sports are built. And you said something interesting, because hopefully the internet keeps slowing down on us here. Hopefully this won't mess up this episode, but. We have this situation where, as I was saying about the schemes and so many other layers in football that are necessary for someone to have that continued success. And one for Tom Brady, again, Tom Brady is one of the baddest dudes I've ever seen. But he also has had one of the baddest dudes I've ever seen at tight end with Gronk. Just as people always say, well, as great, we were prisoner of the moment with Montana. And, well, he wouldn't be Montana if he didn't have Jerry Rice. And the same could be said on down the line for so many tandems and triple teams, like the best show on turf for the Rams with Kurt Warner.
Oh, the greatest show on turf with Kurt Warner, Marshall Faulk, and the two receivers, Holt and Bruce.
Exactly. So you have to have that. And Warner's in the Hall. And is Isaac Bruce in?
Neither of the receivers is. Marshall Faulk is.
I knew Marshall Faulk was in. But, you have to have those extra
no,
layers.
Neither Holt nor Isaac Bruce is. Yeah.
Oh, neither are in.
But I tell you, the wide receivers aren't in yet. Marshall Faulk is. It's pretty incredible. I mean, this game yesterday, to me, one of the most amazing plays, though, and Mahomes he had to be Superman yesterday, because, I mean, again, he was running for his life. One of the plays that really stuck out to me, and I think it was in the third quarter, he was running for his life, and I think it might have been Barrett had him in the grasp, and he was like parallel to the ground, and Mahomes just let go of the ball, threw it, and Darrell Williams, it hit him in the hands. And it went through his hands, hit his face mask, and in the end zone. That would have been a touchdown. That actually would have kept the game. I mean, it would have made the game. I think it was 28-9 at the time. And I mean, it makes it 28-16. At that point, you're kind of like, hey, you know what? this, we get a stop and then we're back in this thing.
Momentum's everything in sports. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think Hill dropped a touchdown too. I mean, that's the thing. Guys have to make plays. I mean, Mahomes, I think this is going to ultimately be good for him in the long run, because I don't think they were ever complacent this year, but I think he's a guy who's going to use this as fuel. And I think, I think they're going to be able to do this. And I honestly, I would not be surprised if they were back there again next year. It just because Mahomes to me is that good. I mean, he's Michael Jordan good, LeBron good.
I agree. I agree.
He's the guy that everything has to go through them. But to me, but the big thing is you got to get those guys up in front of him healthy. And I will never stop pounding the table for getting a good offensive line.
That's everything
for the quarterback. It really is. I mean, you look at the teams that go to the playoffs every year, even the teams that don't have much of the quarterback, they have to have excellence on the offensive line, and it's just it's necessary, and it's I mean, that's why I'm I look at and before guys got hurt for Kansas City, they had an elite offensive line. They had one of the top 10 offensive lines in the game. The Tampa Bay, that's a big part of the reason they were so good yesterday, is their offensive line, after a couple of tough plays early in the game, they started to dominate the game. And so that was impressive for them. I just I can never stop pounding the ground, pounding the table for offensive line. To me, when I look at the Chargers, we're LA based, and Justin Herbert is a franchise quarterback. He is the future of that team. They've got the weapons all around them. They got a great running back in Austin Eckler. They've got great receiver. They've got a top 5 wide receiver in Keenan Allen. On the other side, they got Mike Williams, who is just a ball hawk. But they had a very porous offensive line. And that to me, if they don't keep that kid upright, he's not going to be. That's going to be a problem. Potential. That's
correct.
Yeah. But
I think in a way he's kind of, I don't want to denigrate anyone, but I do think in a way he's kind of a mini Patrick Mahomes type of situation, in that neither one played at some I know one was at Oregon, the other was at Texas Tech, but
yes,
neither school is considered Alabama, Texas, Auburn, those types of schools where we get all these powerhouse players coming. I like the fact that both came from schools that aren't necessarily traditional powers, and I love it's the underdog story. So I like that a lot. I want Herbert to win. I'd like to see Mahomes come. I would love to see there be a rematch. This is a little out there because I know it's tough to make it back to the Super Bowl, period. But it would be kind of interesting. It would be very interesting to see the Kansas City Chiefs make it back to the Super Bowl next year against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I would love to see KC win it next year. And then I'd love to see them go one more year for a rubber match. I think fans would eat it up. I think there are so many different storylines going on. And the distraction of what happened with Andy Reid's son, or what he did. Yeah. Andy Reid's son a few days before. The daughter of the owner of KC is this big Instagram thing, and there seems to be a different level of distractions on KC side, whereas Tampa, I didn't hear much of anything coming from there. Like, it was just, and I think it's because old man Brady's involved. It's just like, no, dude, we're not going to talk. We're going to talk on the field, and then we can do what we want afterwards. And even Gronk, if you notice, I didn't hear anything from Gronk leading up. So I think they bought in. I think they all bought in.
Yeah.
So that's good. I want to see more and more of that. So anyway, listen, Jorge, Hector, and Ricky, every single day almost during the football season, right? Every day or almost every day?
Yeah, we were 4 days a week during the season.
4 days a week. Stats, stories, challenging each other. Now, the things that you guys are going to see coming up to the draft this year from Famila FFB, I want you to make sure you pay attention, because if you want to find out who's going to be what in the draft, how each one of these players or types of players may help any of the 32 teams in the NFL coming up, it's incumbent upon you to make sure you tune into as Jorge and his guys turn things up beginning in the next couple of weeks, because these guys are stat hawks. They not only are stat hawks, but they also give these opinions on the stats that they pull up that are going to help you to think more just past the emotion, as we discussed at the beginning of this episode. So I wanted to bring Jorge on to start off the post of this football season, because I think going into 2021 that the NFL is going to be bigger than ever coming out of the pandemic. All these other things that are happening in the world, we're going to look for more and more things that are going to unify us, and nothing unifies us like sports. And so I think all different permutations of sports within the sports, the wagering, just the fandom of it. Famila FFB is going to have the types of discussions I need to tune into, and I'm encouraging all of you guys to do so, because it's going to be an interesting next 3 months or so. When is the draft? Approximately. The draft is going to be, I think, 3 months from now, somewhere around there. So anyway, you guys keep an eye out, keep an ear out for it. And
the draft it's the end of, the draft is at the end of April.
End of April. Oh, so we're just talking 2.5 months.
Yeah, so that's one of the things we're gonna spend some time. We're definitely gonna spend a fair amount of time talking about the draft. Mm-hmm. A big thing that's gonna happen, I think it's in mid-March, is NFL free agency. So we're going to see where guys end up landing, how the teams are constructed, and what teams are doing around, I think it gives teams a look at what they need when they're going up to the draft. And the reason why I don't want to harp too much on players in, going into the draft is because I don't know where they're going to end up. And it could be a situation where a player comes in, a player looks like a world beater, and he ends up in a situation where he's sharing the ball. A big indication was J.K. Dobbins with the Baltimore Ravens. He was considered one of the best running backs in the NFL. In college football, his senior season, and but he got drafted by the Ravens, who, number one, have a quarterback in Lamar Jackson, who is a 1,000-yard rusher by himself. So that's one thing. But
and a Heisman winner.
Yes,
I'm talking about Ingram as the Heisman.
Exactly. He had a Heisman winner in Mark Ingram and Gus Edwards. So he, three-headed monster. It took Dave Dobbins eventually became a very productive player, but first half of the season was not a bit. He was not able to break out as much because the opportunity was there, and that to me is the big thing when it comes to looking for gems is opportunity. And being able seeing how guys take hold of that opportunity. Another great example is Justin Jefferson with the Minnesota Vikings. They traded this year. Yeah, they traded Stephon Diggs to the Bills, where he became a stud. But that opened up a whole bunch of opportunities for Justin Jefferson, and I mean he took hold of it. So that's why, for me, really, these next 2 months is looking at studying players and actually kind of studying trends from last season to see what happened. I mean, to me, one of the biggest trends was the amount of great talent that's coming in from college football and being able to contribute in their rookie season. I think it's really elevating, and you're seeing that from the receiver and the running back position. So and actually the quarterback position too. You had Justin Herbert, who really, I mean, before last season, I could never have pictured any one of the three quarterbacks that became starters during that rookie season. I know Jalen Hurts also became a starting quarterback later on. But I didn't think that what Justin Herbert did was going to be possible. Right. Because I remember John Elway, his rookie year was below average. Peyton Manning in his rookie year below average. And these guys are on the Mount Rushmore of quarterbacks. So, yeah, you look at someone like Justin Jefferson, who he had an opportunity and he had talent. I thought he was one of the 2 or 3 most talented wide receivers going in there. And I thought he was better than both of the Alabama receivers, Jerry Jeudy and Henry Ruggs. I thought he was right. For me, him, T. Higgins, and CeeDee Lamb were the best wide receivers that I saw going into that draft. And he just had the opportunity. And it was amazing to watch that. And I was so impressed by him. And actually it's got me, and I used to think that it would take at least a year for wide receivers to kind of acclimate themselves. But now it's kind of like, okay, I'm really got to look at the opportunity that's ahead of this guy. Is this a quarterback who likes to throw? Is this a team that is, that has an opening for a guy to maybe become an elite wide receiver? So it's got me really thinking about that. I mean, and I tell you, the wide receiver talent that's in the NFL right now may be the best I've ever seen. And it's just spectacular. I mean, you got a guy like DK Metcalf to me, who's like Calvin Johnson, Megatron.
I love watching that guy play.
We've talked.
Yeah.
Oh, he's tall. He's powerful. He's so fast, and I mean, he's just a baller. I mean, I still, to me, one of the highlight plays of the season was the one where he
chased that
tracked
guy down. Right.
So I mean, it was. I mean, the memes that came out of that were just wonderful.
That was funny.
Again, but I mean, there are multiple guys like that. I mean, he is going to be on a level of like a Julio Jones or a Calvin Johnson. AJ Brown, another guy who's an incredible talent. I mean, it's just, I mean, you look around, I mean, there's so many great players, and I mean, I'm already, it's like, here we are the day after the Super Bowl. I already can't wait to start talking. And you know how much I love baseball and basketball.
Absolutely. That's why I said this year is going to be special. It's going to be quite interesting because as much as I brought up the draft earlier in our conversation, I'm actually more interested in free agency, just like you brought up a second ago. It's very similar to why I think the Rams going after Matthew Stafford at 32 years old. The old paradigms, the thought process, I think needs to go out of the window. Not always, because there's a lot of wisdom and all that stuff, but broadening the perspective is going to be very helpful moving forward. And so grabbing someone that may be old by yesterday's standards, but still has a solid 5 years or so in them, like I believe Stafford, with the way the guys taking care of their bodies and following Brady and LeBron's lead on all that stuff. It's one of those things where I'm thinking, go with what's proven rather than the potential and the hype of the college guy. And I think that, and these guys, by the time they're second, third year, you mentioned all these guys that have done better than expected in their first year. They're still not the norm. More so, the norm is second, third year in, you become physically at your peak. Real guy, 25, 26 years old, All-American, warranted, all the accolades in college. Doesn't necessarily mean you're going to go head-to-head against some guy that's 26, 27 years old and come out victorious. Those guys that are 27, 20, 26, 20. Shaq Barrett's the perfect example. I don't think he was drafted. He made it to Denver's practice team when he first came on. He and his wife had a couple youngins at the time. His life was very busy, very intense for a 22-year-old. And this guy stuck with it. And now look at him. He's one of the baddest dudes on the field right now.
He made a lot of money. He made a lot of money in the last month.
Yes, he did. And deservedly so. And so you look at him and you take a look at his story. And that's why I like to see guys like Shaq Barrett come up, seeing a guy like Justin Herbert come up. And even honestly, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, guys like that, they weren't that heralded. What was Tom Brady? He was so deep in the draft. I mean, he looked like nothing, no muscle on him. It's like, how's this guy going to last? And, you can go down the list that way.
Pick number 199.
199. And who's the Draymond Green is the guy I think that started that trend of, as if he's rattling off the ABCs. They ask him once a year, can you name the guys that came before you in the draft? Blah, 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 blah. And this guy, he hits all, I think he was the 28th pick or the 29th pick in the draft. And that's the why. You remember, we've talked a lot, and I always say how the why is the most important. For Draymond Green, think about it. People are like, oh, but his name last year at this time was in the conversation of potential Hall of Famer. And we'll see how that ends up. But the bottom line is he definitely will be remembered as one of the best players of his generation. And his why is his Energizer Bunny engine is 100% about the 20 plus guys that he has seared in his brain that came before him in the draft. And I think there are a lot of guys like that. And your physical and your mental well-being mature within that mid-20s to late 20s if you're lucky enough to stay in the profession. And I think that we benefit as fans watching someone like Shaq Barrett, peaking at the right time. And he was not a Alabama player. He wasn't a fill in the blank, big school, big high school, big college player. I love that. That makes me want to follow someone, more and more when I see them achieve excellence over time. Curry, that's why I love watching Curry play basketball. I know he came from a father but that doesn't usually equate. Little tiny skinny dude from Davidson. Name anyone before or after from Davidson, and we probably can't. So Curry is that perfect example of that little engine that I love watching and rooting for guys like that. Anyway, I get caught up in that all the time. But free agency, can't wait till you guys are on that. We're going to bring back Jorge a million more times this year because we have a lot of Dodgers to talk about here in the next month as well. So we want to connect with him again. And as free agency happens in football, we are 100% going to lean on Jorge for free agency in the NFL. So I appreciate you coming on, man. I want to cut this a little short so we don't get people going too long, but we'll have you on so many more times from today. And I appreciate you sitting in again at the last moment.
Oh, my brother, I'm happy. I'm always happy to help out. God, we go back so far back, but it's it's awesome. Hey, you know what? Hey, isn't this fun just to chop it up like this? This is awesome. But
we can go so much longer, but for the audience sake, I want to make sure that we give you guys a taste now, and we're going to really open things up very, very soon. So thanks for hanging in there with us, and we look forward to seeing you guys again soon.